It is important to differentiate management from leadership, because that gets confused quite a bit. Management is very different than leadership. One is a science, the other is an art. One deals with the how, the other deals with the why. Management deals with arranging inputs using resources of people and material to achieve predictable outputs. Therefore, it's a science. Leadership, on the other hand, is the ability to inspire and win the hearts and minds of those one leads. There's no formula of how to positively influence. That's why we call it an art. And if you think about it, in a martial art, the reason why they call it a martial art is because a kick can be delivered in one particular direction, but there are multiple ways to respond to that kick. In a Filipino martial arts, it would be counteroffensive. Right? In different martial arts, they would actually block, etc., etc. So it is an art, many different outcomes. Both are necessary for any organization to function well, but one can never replace the other. General MacArthur, my hero, once said, "Give me 10,000 Filipinos and I will conquer the world." What did he see in our people to make him love our homeland so much? I believe he saw a people who with good leadership could accomplish anything. The strength of the Filipino has always been in faith in God and the pillar of the family. Wisdom from our elders embedded in each of our hearts is embedded in our culture, our language, and our outlook on the world. Our elders must have done something right for the indomitable Filipino spirit. We find a resolve not only to get by, but to thrive. I've been to some pretty remote places in the world because the military has sent me to that, and it's not surprising to find Filipinos there. Wherever we go, people love who we are, for we work hard and we contribute to make our new country that we've adopted better. Our people have made a difference wherever we have gone. You find our people enduring the hardest of working and living conditions, fueled by love for their family and trust in God's providence. So what does good leadership look like? Well, to begin, one needs to know first how to be a good follower before one can lead. Humility is an essential virtue for servant leadership. The qualities of a leader demand that the leader be one of good character, one who at the very least puts into practice what we would call the high-low principle: honesty, integrity, loyalty, and obedience, and a good sense of personal order. And a bunch of good humor actually goes along well with that too. But leaders must have a vision and inspire others to work to accomplish it together. And that's the key. What vision do you have? What do you want to see your organization to reach? Now, the Canadian Army uses 10 principles of leadership to transmit leadership traits to trainees. These can be summarized into 5 habits that have been taught since the time of Aristotle. I'll go through them one by one. And as I do so, I'll be reminding myself of what's important for leadership. Now, as I speak, remember that self-examination and reflection is important for a leader. So nobody's perfect, but we must blaze a trail and strive to be perfect. So the first is, exercise good judgment. Leadership is about the exercise of sound judgment. It is not surprising that education has always been seen as the key to leadership. Militaries around the world will say that their foremost investment in national defense would be the military college or academy that they have. In our case, it's the Royal Military College. Back in the Philippines, it's the Philippine Military Academy. Diplomas and degrees were seen as the basic standard that guaranteed that one had studied the basics and had the minimum depth of knowledge to make good decisions. It showed that you could learn and that you could apply. One does not need a degree or diploma to lead. We have all met people who do not study, but through reading have outpaced university graduates. I think about my own Lola, who in Bicol, who built a small empire with only a basic Filipino education, learned the laws concerning property, taxation, and land ownership, and all she did was she went to the courts every single day and watched the proceedings, read the court records, and then conversed with lawyers and judges. Now, as the adage goes, experience is the best teacher. In the Canadian Army, young leaders are encouraged to exercise their judgment through decision-making. Decision-making cycles of planning and executing various problem-solving tasks under the watchful eye of a mentor. They are supposed to draft up a plan, transmit that plan to their subordinates, and see it through to success, or recover from failure. In today's environment where the actions of a single soldier could have strategic impact on politics and world affairs, every single soldier is trained to think and to make good judgments. Today's Army requires its soldiers to be intelligent, ethical, moral, and situationally aware. The higher in rank one goes, the more you must study in order to progress. So the question for you young leaders is this, and for myself too: how are we working on achieving professional competence in the chosen field that you have? You might be sitting there and saying, hey, all I am is a high school student. But that's your professional job right here and right now. You have to be the best high school student, university student, accountant, lawyer, teacher, whatever it is that you are. But you have to be good at your craft. So that means you have to study. The second thing is give each person his or her due. The stereotype of the military leader is a crass, boorish, lowly educated, hollering, contemptible example of a human that derides more intelligent draftees with obscenities and hate, micromanaging every aspect of their lives to bring them into misery. I know that it's freaked out a bunch of Filipino mothers when their sons decided they were going to join the Army, because that's the vision that they had in their head, probably including my own mother. Where's my mom? Anyway. On the contrary, the modern Canadian Army expects its leaders to respect each and every single person. The people we lead have the right to be respected and are obliged to respect others in return. Additionally, the diplomacy that we need to exercise with the people we come into contact with on our deployments all around the world demand it. Now, the origin and the custom of the hand salute, everybody's seen that, okay, reinforces this. It is not a practice of subordination like you see on TV. It's a symbol of mutual respect and a shared bond. The lower rank always initiates the salute to remind the leader who they must look out for and the leader must acknowledge. Now, at the Canadian victory at Vimy Ridge, since we're coming up to that 100th anniversary there, General Currie, commander of the Canadian Corps, brought in a revolutionary practice that is still in place today. He gave each soldier a map for the first time in history and made each understand the big picture and their individual contribution to the success of that mission. In the Canadian Army, we practice what we call mission command. In other words, soldiers are trained to act with intelligent obedience, to have situational awareness, to know the intent and how they play into the accomplishment of the mission. People must be empowered and resourced and never micromanaged. They should be allowed the creativity to complete the objective and amazing things result. This requires a lot of patience and trust in the abilities of one's team, but if you value your people, you will treat them with disrespect. People in an organization will treat others and each other as they are treated. If they are led by a tyrant, a self-serving survivalist mentality will emerge. If they are led by a benevolent and charitable leader, there is a greater chance that they will not only transmit this attitude to each other, but also look out for the organization as a whole. So some questions for us. We have to ask ourselves, do we know the people in our organizations, and are we promoting their welfare? Do we train our people as a team and employ them to their capabilities? And lastly, do we keep our followers informed of the overall picture, the mission, and the changing situation? Or are we just micromanaging? So how are we building a culture of respect in our organizations? The third principle is this: be strong in the face of adversity. Leadership training in the Canadian Infantry Corps is some of the most demanding in the world. It's not only an ordeal demanding physical robustness, but also demands that one be able to think and demonstrate good character when under the pressures of being sleep-deprived, starved, physically exhausted and aching, and emotionally burnt out. All while the people you're leading are exactly the same way. Now, under such pressures, all veneers of a person's character are chafed raw, and their true character usually shows forth. Some people actually crack, and some give up in some pretty astounding ways. Some become extremely selfish. On the other hand, those who continue to maintain the exercise of selflessness and who sacrifice to their subordinates while keeping an eye on the objective and can manage to inspire others under these conditions truly emerge as leaders. Now, in the military, when not on operations, we are constantly exercising ourselves. We will put ourselves under as similar a circumstance to the actual conditions of war as possible, with its stress, confusion, and chaos. Professionals don't work until we get things right, but rather until we get things wrong. And therefore, if and when the worst happens, leaders and followers will know what to do. So some questions to ask ourselves. Do we appreciate our own strengths and our limitations, and do we seek self-improvement? Do we seek and accept responsibility? Or are we the ones that sit aside when somebody asks for a volunteer? Do we make sound and timely decisions, or do we take forever to make a decision? So, the question you have to ask yourself is, for your own organization, how are we training ourselves in our organizations to face adversity? The fourth is exercising self-control. Now, warriors have always been admired for the stoicism, which for some figures in history has become legend. Now, think about the Kali, or the Highness, or the Eskrima Guros and Grandmasters, the samurai, or the Spartans. Why is the image of the warrior monk so revered? It's because leaders have the obligation to serve. The higher one goes in rank, the more the obligation to serve increases. Rank has only one true privilege, and that privilege is to serve, and thus the duty to carry the burdens of others. In the Canadian Army, we have a practice that the leader is the servant of all. The leader is the first to wake, the last to sleep, the first to initiate work, and the last to eat. Like good parents, they ensure that those they serve are the first to be fed, meaning that the highest rank eats last. Often, leaders can be seen serving the soldiers as they pass through the meal line themselves. This practice ensures that the virtues of humility, generosity, and self-sacrifice of the leader to the subordinates remains an essential principle. At the end of any exercise, mission, or operation, before anyone is dismissed, and before anyone takes a shower, cleans their kit, etc., the first thing that we do is what we call weapons maintenance. We clean and maintain the tools of our trade, all the rifles, the machine guns, etc., in order to ensure that they are serviceable and ready for the next bound. This can demand an intense amount of self-control, especially when you just want to lie down and to sleep. Now, after a long march, it is the duty of the leader to order the soldiers to sit down on their rucksacks, take off their boots and socks, and the leaders walk down the line inspecting the feet of the soldiers, which can have become bloodied and blistered after a 13.5-kilometer march. If there are damaged feet, the leader helps with foot care, supervising, bandaging, etc. Usually this duty is no nosegay, bahoyan. So, however, this not only demonstrates charity to the soldiers, but also the principle of the order of responsibility each leader must have. Firstly, the completion of the objective. Secondly, care for our people. And thirdly, the care for one's own interests. So, questions. What practices are we encouraging in our own organizations to encourage selflessness? And do our subordinates believe that we have their interests before our own? And the last one. Want the best for those you lead. Tapping into this ancient Filipino wisdom, great leaders are like great parents who want the best for their children. Parents who teach, protect, provide, guide, discipline, form, and above all, shapes the next generation. This is perhaps why this reverence is built within our language. Ninong, Ninang, Kuya, Ate, etc. And in some of our regions, the practice of mano po. Hand to head, wisdom from one generation to the next, trust from the younger to the older generation. A great parent is the one who, out of sacrificial love, is affectionate when the children are doing right, and who are stern when something needs to be justifiably corrected. It is a bond that is fostered through countless small acts of love out of the unbreakable commitment of loyalty flowing from leader to the follower and bottom up. As any parent can attest, this is back-breaking and thankless work, but it is necessary to form the next generation. So ask yourself, what vision do we have for our people? Begin there, and like Michelangelo taking a look at a huge rock, shaping away at this rock to make the Pietà or to make the David, you start to begin with that vision in mind, and then the image emerges. Ultimately, a great parent is a great leader who creates another leader who will be able to do their job and put them out of a job. So, and grow the family or actual institution. It is the truest form of servant leadership. And further to the analogy, good leadership is reaffirmed if the children or subordinates trust their leader to have the best interests in mind and feel an unbreakable bond to the family, like many of us have to our own. So the question we have to ask ourselves is, what are we doing to develop the leadership potential of our own followers? And in conclusion, the art of leadership can be learned. I'll leave you with one last reflection. The motto of any leader is lead by example. We have to lead from the front. We need to set the standard that we want others to emulate. Keep it simple. Even if everything is breaking down around us, communication becomes garbled, etc., the easiest direction to give is follow me. Now, some of the history's greatest charges in battle were achieved with the leader getting up, shouting, and pushing forward, and others followed. While our leadership challenge may require us to be much more methodical in our delivery, this leadership principle remains a pillar. Lead by example. So, my fellow Filipino Canadians, from the wisdom of our elders, to the hearts, down to the generation, family first and faith in God's providence has always been what has made us strong. It is time for us to step up and to prove ourselves. And as General MacArthur said, 10,000 Filipinos can transform the world. Maraming salamat po sa inyong lahat.